what is something that you may have came across, may have seen maybe in messages that are like, that is nearly a silly re-edit that doesn't actually, because it'd be interesting from a creator's point of view and a brand's in terms of, you, Maria, do a lot of ads, seeing what actually makes a difference for an ad.
All right, girls, today's topic is re-edits. I know we discussed edits and reshoots and all these things, so I feel like we need to also clarify this part because there's few brands that, on Clip at least, that don't really make the difference between a re-edit and a complete reshoot. And I think that's the biggest misunderstanding that is happening on the platform. Maybe to clarify for the creators as well on their side, because sometimes when you say a re-edit, they might think, oh no, this is a complete reshoot, but it's just a re-edit. It's not. You don't have to do it because I think because they're thinking that they need to reshoot the whole thing instead of being smart about, let's just cut this part and just I don't know, add a b-roll or something. They just go into full mode of like,
Panic.
oh no, I have to reshoot. Yeah. So yeah, it would be great to to just start from your perspective as a creator. What do you think of like a re-edit is, and then what we consider on Clip what a re-edit is as well.
So I think we discussed it a little bit earlier on in the podcast at some episodes, for one of the first episodes.
Probably.
Is that re-edit would be a small element of your video that was included in the brief and the creator didn't necessarily match with the video in my head. So it could be anything from any specific scenes that don't necessarily work, or if there are actual mistakes, right? So I think the most common one would be that creators actually add music or captions on the main video, which should be a raw edited version. And also to all creators out there, because me and Ali give you feedback, obviously, this is probably one of the most common feedbacks I give as well, and I bet Ali as well. Just avoid adding captions or music or any sort of moving elements, sound effects, unless otherwise requested in the brief as an add-on. Because first of all, you should be paid more for this. Second of all, not every brand is actually going to be looking at it for it. So it's actually a waste of time, because then we all know that it does take a little bit to find the right sound, to match all the captions, to check the, grammar.
That's a big one, for re-edits, is like, if you are putting in your captions, make sure you have no spelling mistakes in them. And like every so often still I'll catch myself, or I'll be like, oh crap, something was wrong. But always what I recommend here is, after you actually download the video, mute the video and then watch it with just the captions to catch any.
Such a good idea.
It's such a thing. And it's also too that element of another re-edit is like the brand name spelt wrong, or you're pronouncing the brand name wrong. That's such a big re-edit.
That's a big one.
If you're not sure about the brand name, double check with them, and like always double check everything. And what we'll end up saying a lot in this episode will be communicate, because that's the best way to avoid any re-edits and reshoots. Going on the back of what Nicola said there too, so for us it's literally like clip changes that if it's b-roll or if there's a wee section that they're like, oh, just actually we don't want this in it, and it's just cropping. It's not reshooting. It shouldn't be having to physically film something again.
Yes.
Now, there is situations that can happen. So for example, I had a recent one there that, for example, it was a clothing brand and they had like 3 pieces in their set. So it was like a top over zippy and then leggings. But when I filmed that video, I just assumed, which was probably wrong with me now looking back, that, oh, I can put this quarter zip on top and talk about it. But then in their re-edit request, they went and said, oh, actually they're to be wore separate, so we just need that hook again, but like different. So that technically is a reshoot of that. However, it's such a small one that like stuff like that, it's so minor to fix that it's actually okay. Or they might want something slightly different. So ideally you don't want to. I think it's the worst thing ever if you have to do a reshoot and it's like the talk and reshoot, because you're physically having to like do it.
Yeah,
those are still fine enough. No, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that to me, this is where that keyword communication comes in, especially for testimonials. Because technically, if it is just a face to camera, full on testimonial for like 30 seconds, you just talk to camera with edited clips, most of the re-edits are going to be a total reshoot. Like there's not much you can do. There's no much playing around unless you're smart about it and you talk to the brand being like, okay, we can maybe change and add some b-roll, and then you just record a little voiceover. But then still, it's most likely going to be a reshoot. So the things to do to avoid that for a testimonial is literally ask for any sort of details that you can think of. Think about what you should be wearing, what should be the location that you recorded, the script, send for approval.
Always get it, yes.
There is no way you are supposed to record a testimonial without approval of the script. With any other type of videos, whenever there's B-roll, whenever there's a voiceover, there's so many ways that you can cover up little changes in the script, because that's another reason for a re-edit quite often, is that the brands don't necessarily feel the script, or it's too salesy, or it's too organic, or or they want a different CTA or a different hook. Could all be easily avoided if there was a little bit more communication on that script part, especially for the hook. I feel like most of the times brand will have some sort of like a vision without realizing it. And then the re-edit, quite often, unfair because it wasn't mentioned in the brief. But sometimes brands would be like, oh, but we were hoping for something a little bit more like this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is why it's like nearly having confidence in yourself, and it gives you that element to push back, that if you've went through that stage of being like, this is my script, are you happy? Or this is the hook specifically, are you happy to sign this off? Because if they come back and then are actually like, actually we prefer this hook, then you're more likely to open and be like, look, it was already pre-approved. I filmed the content. This is then actually an additional edit that's not technically included because it was already pre-approved. So it's always making sure that you can fully back yourself, that you're like, I know that I've done everything right, that if there is anything else that's on the brand and that's extra. Because at the end of the day, UGC is very much like a time is money game. And you could be filming other content, you could be pitching to other brands, you could be actually doing so much more work. Whereas if you have to do a reshoot, then that's, do you know what I mean, taking away time and money as such for you. So always want to make sure that you're getting those scripts pre-approved, that then there's going to be less issues down the line. And to be honest too, I see a lot more now too, brands want it pre-approved, or they want like, this is our, so for example, a few times I've got recently, it's brands saying like, this is our script. However, please feel free to make your own, just keep it in the same angle, but send it to us before. So then they are thinking too, we don't want the actual longevity. Because for a brand too, if I'm a brand, I want to get the content ASAP. I want to be able to post that content ASAP. I don't want a big lead time in between. This need to fix, that need to fix, and it's going to increase everything. So it keeps the brand and the actual creator too really consistent, that you get
and
fast
accountable
content
as well.
Yeah,
and accountable as well, because I think for the brands, it's so easy to be picky, but they don't actually think strategically, as Yulali said, about the time essence, right? Like, you have to have that video. This is one of the USPs of Clip, is that you get a videos in a specific amount of time, and it's going to be like boom, 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 sorted. But then if you are a brand and you're actually prolonging the process by asking for sometimes edits that are not going to change anything in the actual how the video can perform.
That's something I would like to actually chat to you about. What is something that you may have came across, may have seen maybe in messages that are like, that is nearly a silly re-edit that doesn't actually, because it'd be interesting from a creator's point of view and a brand's, in terms of, you, Maria, do a lot of ads, seeing what actually makes a difference for an ad. Because obviously, this is probably more for Maria, since you out to creators too for ads. Like, what do you think in your mind is like a re-edit you could ask for, but you're like, it's not worth my time because I know it's not going to make a material difference in the long run?
Yeah, for us, a re-edit that would change, that would make a change probably, is very like technical. For example, creators that put the text overlay not in the safe space, or the caption not in the safe space, and I'm just like, for example, I had this video from a creator, and there was a scene where there should have been 2 timers, and then one was like, you get the influencer post in a week or something like that, or 2 weeks or whatever, and then with Clip you can just get it in like less than 7 days. And the ticking clock had to stay not that much for Clip, and had to stay a bit longer for the influencer. Everything was mentioned in the brief, obviously, and then the creator just dragged everything too much, and it wasn't snappy. I don't know if, to be honest, in the ads would have made a difference or not. I can't say that. But for me, because if I would be the audience and I would see that, I would be just like, okay, when is this scene going to change? Yeah, exactly. It wasn't snappy enough. But I would never ask for a reshoot if, for example, creators, instead of saying Clip, they say use Clip because of the website. And sometimes I'm just like, look, it doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. This
They'll
is our
still
website.
end up to your website, yeah.
This is not going to change anything. Like, I'm not going to ask for a re-edit. For example, we had this video too slow. This is not like what we were expecting. But I was like, look, you know what? I'm just going to try and see how it works. And guess what? It actually works. It converts. So
I love the fact that you said that, because I think that highlights the fact too sometimes that if you're nearly too honed in on your idea or the brief, and like a creator might put their own spin on it, and you're like, they did do it right, but it wasn't what I envisioned. Give that chance just to see, like, try to test it and to see, because then, like, as like literally you said, Maria, like, you were surprised, like, there you go, it actually did do well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even for these kind of things, but it really depends on the brand's product, because if it's a finance app or if it's like a mortgage app or very technical, you have to check with the brand. But for us, these are the things that are silly changes that won't change anything, and it's not going to do any good for any of us. We're also more flexible as a brand in general when we get videos from creators. Even when we see a video that is like quite rubbish, we're just like, fine, I'll just edit it a bit. But I'm not saying this is what brands should do. This is just us. This is what we're doing.
When that happens, so do you find yourself that you'll not then go back to that creator? You'll not accept them in another campaign if they've given you that? Yeah. So I think that, for people listening as well, like we spoke about this quite a few times before, that sometimes brands won't give you feedback, but they'll not come back to you. And that sometimes, not that every brand should come back to you, and like they may not have the campaigns or it may not fit, but you'll not always get that feedback, but they'll not come back. So that's why it is so important too, and why, like, we genuinely, Nicola and me, this is a plug for us here, that when we watch the videos and give the feedback, that's not us just giving generic feedback. We generally watch your videos and genuinely think, right, how could this be improved? So sometimes it is thinking, is there any way? So read that feedback as well and be like, okay, you know, my lighting wasn't good or my tone of voice. That's something I actually want to talk about too, is maybe controversial, I don't know, but I personally believe if a video is shot, no matter how good that video is, if their tone of voice is off, I personally believe that's a full reshoot. Even if it's face to camera, even if it's a voiceover, it's a full reshoot, because I think, especially now, like for example, I got my mum doing her first UGC video. And
congrats!
It was very random. A brand literally message saying, like, any chance like you've an older, like your parents or something would be interested in doing it. And I was like, you know what? I was down over Christmas and I was like, Mum, I'm gonna rope you into this. And she loved it. But I think what it like kind of brought back to me again is there's such a skill, and it's probably underrated as well, in tones of voice and not just talking like you're reading. Because with my mum, it spent a good, this script should have only took 5 minutes, done. If it was me doing it, that would have been it done, because I'm so used to just and not to say either, like obviously I could have a bad day, my tone might be off or it might not fit the brand, happens to everyone. But bless her, my poor mum, she was trying so hard, but she was reading it and it was so like, so today I went to do this, and I was like, no, not the tone. You gotta think like you're chatting to your friend, like it's like that. So it took quite a while for me to like nearly get her warmed up and get that tone of voice I wanted. That then it kind of brought back to me, I was like, you know what, I could have sent that video off and that could have been the initial tone of voice that she done. I could have put it on it, but it would not have performed, and I knew it wouldn't have, because it wasn't right. So I think for brands, do be crucial too if you get a video and you're like, the voice tone's not right here, it doesn't sound like authentic, it sounds a little bit fake. Firstly, for me, I would say go back to that person and say to them like, look, I want you to actually do like a more authentic tone of voice, because that, I personally think, when I'm watching ads, if it feels like an ad, I'll swipe on, whereas if it feels more natural, I'll be more likely to watch. But what do you think? Do you agree, disagree? Like, I'm interested.
No, I think I agree. And also, to add to it, I think to focus more on the voiceover side of things, I think most of the time it would be with that. The problem is that sometimes creators break down a sentence into separate, like, audio clips. And that also affects the authenticity massively. It would be like, so this has ingredients like pause for some reason, and then they go, I don't know, glycerin, hyaluronic acid, and it's very broken down.
Yeah.
And this affects the audio flow so much that I think for me, that would be another reason for a re-edit. Is I think quite often the re-edit in my eyes would be towards the voiceover. Sometimes I would think maybe even more often than the visuals itself when it comes to like clips like that, because as you, Ali, said, I 100% agree that voiceover might break or make or break the video in general and how it performs, because it is like the most of the authenticity you can actually get out of your voice. Like with B-roll clips, like you can have the most aesthetic or authentic clips you can imagine, but if the voiceover feels like a robot or like if you're reading, then it's like, what am I watching? What's the
screams
connection?
odd. I think
it
that
does, yeah.
You don't want it. So like that to me would be, have you got any other things that you would be like, right, straight away reshoot? Because I agree,
Yes.
audio for me would be a big one. I would say lighting as well. Like,
Lightning, massively.
If now, obviously, like right now, for example, I'm sitting in front of a window, but my lighting compared to you two is still not that great. Like it's very like cold and it's not right. That we don't always get the best weather. And I feel like we spoke about this before in equipment and stuff you can get. Also, we done it on a live. But if you don't have good lighting in your video, or the lighting's really mismatched, because that can happen a lot, and something I personally struggle with too, that I could be filming and it could be half an hour, but the lighting from the start to the end is completely different. And then I find myself having to go and reshoot clips because I'm like, it's not seamless.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen before in videos that they've got a beautiful lighting. It's like sunny, it's nice. And then all of a sudden it switches to it's nighttime. They're in a really bad lit bathroom and they're applying products. And I'm like, there's a massive disjoint there between that light, airy, beautiful video to then the quality just went downhill and it doesn't feel seamless. So that's something else I'd recommend for people, is try to always have the same level as best you can the whole way through. And if you've done it and you're not happy, but you're like, look, it's the best I could do, say to the brand, look, this is it. If you're really not happy with it, I'm going to have to like wait a couple of days or like to get this lighting. But communicate too, because a few times I've got out to brands and been like, look, I can film this, but it's not the lighting. It's so dark. It's really wet day that if you're happy to, I can push this to the end of the week where I know it's going to be sunnier and then I can get it for you. And with those brands too, they've all came back like, no, prioritize the lighting. And I'm like, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So everyone's
100%.
on the same side.
Lighting. Then for me, another thing is just your kind of like personal appearance as well. Quite often, I would say that would be a reason for a reshoot. Like if you have a stain or like a long piece of hair, or I don't know, anything like it, like always, I feel like me and Ali, we always say this, always do like a 2-second test clip before you start talking.
Yeah.
Like do not record the whole testimonial in like an 8-minute video for then to notice that you have a crumb on your t-shirt.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Because to me, it's just one of those things that you have to keep an eye out. Also, another thing is like your surroundings, like what you have in that 916. What's outside? None of my business. That 916. We all know it happens. We don't know.
Whatever you throw
literally.
Yeah, we all know it happens, but that 916 frame has to be what you need it to be. Like, obviously, if you do it before and after, then go for the mess. But like for the testimonial or anything like that, just keep it clutter-free. Keep it to the point where it feels cozy and lived in, but also like in an aesthetic and sort of organized manner. So have a little plant behind you or something like a point of interest, but not an empty box that you just unboxed the product from in the background. Like, please don't.
Yeah. I feel like that's...
I was asking for that, so...
This is it. This is just based on the assumption that it was not mentioned in the brief. Otherwise, ignore me.
Yeah. Because I've seen briefs with brands saying that just stay in front of a white wall.
Yeah, because they might need it for a green screen, right? Like there's other reasons why, and sometimes for me and Ali it can be a bit tricky as well when we get feedback, because do we comment on it when it wasn't necessarily mentioned, or was it assumed? Was it when things are not in the brief and there's like, we have a deal of like PDF briefs in the messages, then we're probably not going to go so deeply in. So in that case, with the feedback, it's like you never know what the video is intended for unless you're actually in the brief, like you live the brief. So keep that in mind as well. But it all comes down to having, as a creator, focus on the brief solely, and do not start shooting without going back to the brief if you looked at it like 3 days ago last time. Yeah. Because there might be a little detail. Because when I mentioned, for example, the clothing and stuff, like quite often for the brands, that's when Maria, when you were mentioning the details that necessarily not going to change the video working or not, it's not going to be like make or break. It's, for example, clothing, right? But sometimes brands have a very specific idea. If it goes organically, it needs to work with their feed, etc. So otherwise, it's just not going to work for them. Like that's not what they asked for. And if you miss that little detail of having neutral clothing and you're going to like come up with like a red jumper. That to me is another reason, because
It's
If
only
it's in the
unfortunately,
brief, there's
it's in
no
the brief.
excuse. Yeah,
Exactly.
I think it goes back to, it's always like your brief is your Bible. Like, have I completely got this to a T correctly? Because you've no leg to stand on, and you want to always make sure that you can like be like, okay, have I got this right? But I wanted to jump in the back of what you're saying too about like clothing and things that aren't right in filming. I feel like so many creators will relate to this, that we've all done it once, and we've done it once and we never want to happen again, that we're like, that's why we're OTT. A lot of these things, by the way, is like that even me and Nicola's like talking about too, is it's through trial and error that we've done it. We've understood that, oh, for freak's sake, we have to go and reshoot this again. But then you're like, no, I have to do like these wee checks. For example, my audio checks. I want to make sure my clothing's right. I want to make sure if a brand have said, we're wanting to use this for green screen, my actual entire body's in it. So there's little fine tuning things that are very important that you do just have to keep on checking, and you do always need to double check that brief to make sure, have I got it correct? Great. Now move on, film it. Okay, they're going to be more likely to be happy, and so on.
Yeah, that's it.
I just had a question in mind. Well, it's just a situation that I had with a creator that was complaining about the fact that the brand asked to reshoot the part of the video because she wasn't using the product correctly. What I know, if you don't know how to use it, or if it's something complex, just ask the brand. But do you think that brands should, if it's a more complex kind of product, do you think that the brand should put in the brief how
Instructions.
use? Yeah.
Yes. So I think the problem here is, for example, with me, that brand that I was like, I wasn't supposed to wear two, I did like the top and then the quarter zip and top. To me, I was like completely fair enough. The brand hadn't mentioned to me and vice versa. But the reason why I personally in that situation didn't ask was because I just assumed, and sometimes that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
But then I would never have thought to like, oh, this is something that I need to check. Because to me, I was like, oh, this is how it works, obviously. Like, but
yeah, it's obvious. It's just a piece of clothing. Yeah.
But you can still get it wrong. But yeah, I would say for stuff like that. But then it's a learning curve as well. I think brands, if it's skincare and stuff like that, it's nearly in the nicest way possible, treating your script as like what's those books that was called, like Computers for Dummies and all, you don't remember like back in the day? It's nearly thinking like the feel safe way that, and it'll probably only happen that brand once, that they'll know from going on in future. Because I know where that brand for me, they're like, right, in future we'll be putting this in briefs and stuff, because it's something you don't realize. Yes, long-winded way. I think for products, if there's some way you can link a how-to or an example video of this is how the product's used, so you lose any chance of there being any miscommunication or people getting confused, put it in. Because what harm does it do? It's like one simple little link, or one simple like, this is the way you use it, or the order. That's
It's
a big
just
one.
because it's the brand's baby and they assume that everyone knows. I think if a creator doesn't use the product correct way, the brand somewhere out there
it's not doing something right.
Not doing right, because the reason is the customer will do the exact same thing. They would assume, this is how I do it, especially when it is more technical. But sometimes it's as silly as, I had a situation like that last year when I received like artificial flowers in a vase, right? And they sent me like eucalyptus sticks and like little white flower bulbs. And like, again, I assumed that they were two separate bouquets. So I recorded the video. They had like a B-roll shot list and everything. I recorded some B-roll with the white flowers and some B-roll with the eucalyptus. And then they go, we're so sorry, Nicola, but it's like, you are supposed to mix them. And I'm like, okay, but like...
From their point of view, though...
But suppose it's like, why?
It should be, but they sell it as a set.
As a bouquet,
I didn't realize. And then again, I could have either assumed that it was a bouquet that you put together, or I could have assumed that there were two bouquets. But it's just how like customers could potentially think as well.
I think though, for that brand as well, that was a perfect chance for them to be like, right, that's another video we have to make, because clearly it's confusing.
Yeah,
exactly. And I was going to say, when I mentioned earlier, if the customers, well, if a UGC creator does it wrong, most likely customers are going to do it wrong. Use UGC here. Like, make instructional videos for your clients, but also for future creators who are going to like spare yourself from all this, like, going back and forth and explaining things like 3,000 times, because words on paper, sometimes we've all done instructions that were written and instructions that are visual. If you have a visual instruction how to use something, it just becomes like,
just
oh my goodness. Yes,
I
we do.
think that's actually a golden nugget for brands listening, is if that happens, use it as a learning curve and use it to make more content. And like literally, as you said, use it for your organic. It might be UGC for organic stuff on your page, but definitely do that because it can happen. But yeah, I think it is just important for, it's both brands and creators. Like if you're not sure, ask, but also have an open mind too. For example, for that, like that brand came back with like those clips need reshot, and I was like, fair enough. And like I personally, I don't know if everyone else would be like that. People might be like, oh no, you didn't explain blah blah. You have to have an element of being easy to work with. There's miscommunication between two. I'm to keep relationship with this brand happy and to keep everything flowing. No problem. I'll get those clips sorted and get it back to you. But then it makes it nice and like a level. And plus for me too in future, I'm like, okay, that's something I should always double check with brands. Like don't just assume. So yeah, it's definitely, it's all learning curves.
It is, but it also depends on the situation you're in. Sometimes you get the vibe from the brand. Like the brand was lovely about the flower situation. So I was like, you know what? It's an aesthetic bureau around the house. That's going to take me 3 minutes. If you know that something is going to take you 3 minutes, just do it to make everyone's life easier. But it does depend on the brand's approach as well.
That's what I was going to say.
If you wouldn't work with the brand again, it works both ways. Like the brands are selective with creators, but creators are more selective with brands now as well. So to the brands and creators, always make sure that you put your best foot forward, like with any relationship, because you never know what's going to happen. And if you give off specific energy, most likely you are going to receive it back. At some point as well. So
for sure. Yeah, because even the brand, because I saw the edit request in messages, and I was like, I actually thought for a second if I should approve it or not, because I was like,
oh, is this my one?
Yeah, it's yours. Yeah, because they were literally saying like, look, I know we didn't mention this and this is on us. And I was just like, I mean, look, if Ali won't be able to do it, she would just like tell me and whatever. But I thought that, look, the brand was really,
they're lovely,
sincere, you know, and just out there, because that's, I mean, they took it on them like it's our fault. But if you could do this, that'd be amazing. It wasn't like, oh, you need to do this.
Yeah, you need it again.
You need to do this because this is not the right way, you know.
And this comes back to what Nicola was saying, is like sometimes you do have to evaluate like the time it took. Like for me to reshoot, it was like a hook, which was 5 seconds. And yes, fair enough, that was face to camera. And then the other clip was literally me like zipping it up and like without the top underneath. Once again, only a couple of minutes did that take to switch those clips, put it in, send it back to the brand. That I was like, okay, perfect, that's it sorted. Because I have like a real fulfillment in like the client being happy. And if they're happy, I'm happy. And it makes me happy, making them happy. That I'm like, you know what, if I can do something quickly that I know. And like at the end of the day too, you said as well, like they're a very nice brand. And once again, backs up Nicola's comment that it's how you communicate too back and forth, that I was like, you know what, they're lovely people. Of course I want to do this for them. Why not? So it's always, I suppose, assessing the situation and the amount of work. Like that was not much work to do. Whereas if they had have came back and been like, I don't know, basically what would have made me not, I suppose, a good thing to talk about in this, if they had came back saying, we got this wrong, fair enough. However, we would also like a different hook wording. We would like different clips put in now, that they were nearly trying to get a reshoot
more
out
content.
of it. Because brands do that as well. That would be like, this is like the wee bit that's not right, that might be on the creator or might be something that's not hard. However, if they then say, actually, after second thought as well, we think we prefer this angle for a hook, and like add on stuff, that's when I have an issue. Because then I'm like, wait a minute, you're now being a little bit cheeky and crossing the line.
And I agree here as well. And we do sometimes see in the feedback request that brands want a different hook. And this is probably the trickiest revision.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm looking at the video and I'm like, yeah, fair enough, the hook is shite. Like, there's no hook, you know? But then sometimes creators get on the fence and they're like, you can't do that. That's another add-on and things like that. And this is probably the trickiest conversation that you can have with the creator as clip, as creator, as feedback giver, as the brand, is because sometimes we just don't deliver what we promise and we act as if people ask for more than they paid for. But actually, you still have to deliver the bare minimum to be able to say, look, I've done it. This is extra work. Because the video might literally just be not usable by the brand. If you say in the hook, can't think of anything now. But you know, I'm like, just...
I could give you an example. I seen a hook video and I was like, surely that's not the hook. And it was literally a girl drinking tea, not talking, but like this here. Second clip was then, do you ever feel tired? And then like straight into the actual thing. I was like, why didn't you put your actual, like, because the hook still wasn't right, that I was like, oh, I feel like you should try this angle, future, whatever. But even still, I was like, why did you put that as your second clip? So like, don't have a boring first. Like, that's how you hook people in. I'll not even be there to watch your next bit because I got bored in the initial. So like, those first few seconds are so important that you do need to, that if you're a brand and you get a video like that, like, I personally think you're fully in your right to be like, look, it's just not working.
It's not
right. Yeah.
But I think this is just a message to creators to also keep yourself accountable for what you actually deliver. Because sometimes I feel like experienced creators sometimes will know when something is not clicking, but sometimes you have that little risk factor in your head being like, I'm just going to send it. We'll see what happens. And quite often, as we discussed so many times, like, it is such a small thing that brands will not ask for revision, but it is just something that you could count, like you could hold yourself accountable for. If the sound is not perfect, or in one scene there's the sound slightly lower and we're like, this could be, you know what I mean? Like, it could be a potential revision. Yeah. But then you just go with it. And sometimes we all do it. But with little things, I feel like we can get away with, because it's just things that happen, and you have probably like 4 videos to record that day and you just miss it. Try not to miss it in the future, I guess. But for bigger things, like the entire hook not working, or the CTA being not existent, or too salesy, or the whole script, it's just not hitting the spot, hold yourself accountable, because the re-edits requests are fair. Most of the time I would still hold it to the brands that they do genuinely feel like they have thought about it. They have discussed it probably with teams, but then you will get an odd one when they're like, oh, you're wearing a pink top, can you wear a red one? And you're like, no, I can't. This is what I mean. Like, sometimes the edit requests obviously are going to be slightly ridiculous, but most of the time just hold yourself accountable to that standard. Like, you have to have a standard, whatever you send, anything, even if it is just, I don't know, lifestyle b-roll and your voiceover, like, it still needs to be visual storytelling. That's another edit request that I would expect for for creators to fulfill. If brands requests that, you know, the visual doesn't match the script at all times. And that happens quite often, because I feel like sometimes it's too late to make the visuals match the script, if you know what I mean. Because it's like, today I'm styling this scarf with my outfit, and then you show a dress in that moment, for example, because it's like, you have to hook the audience with the visual of the scarf, then it just goes. And sometimes it's worth to just manipulate that a little bit to avoid that re-edit, because you know this will be a re-edit. Everyone will see it and be like,
something's not right.
Where is the scarf?
Like
you are talking about.
It's a weird looking scarf, but it does happen. And I mean, this is just a silly example, but things like that, sometimes in longer form videos, you can really tell that the script, it's almost like they recorded the script separately and they just edited the video and they just overlaid it.
Yeah,
and it does sometimes.
That's lazy. Yeah,
Don't do that.
Do we have anything else to add to our re-edits?
I actually wanted to ask you girls a question, because we already discussed what re-edits are, kind of the differences between like reshoot and re-edit, what to remember, blah, blah, blah. It would be great to also maybe share a couple of tips on how to avoid re-edits in the future. Like, what can be like a little checklist almost to avoid re-edits in the future, potentially.
So I would say for this, number 1, get your script confirmed. Number 2, film additional B-roll. You will do this by accident anyway, to be honest. Like, I'm sure, Nicola, you're the same as me, that I'm filming, I'm like, I'll get a few wee clips, or I'm like, oh, the lighting there is nice, or I'll do one there, but then when I'm editing my video, I will have a few spare. But it's always nice to have just in case. Third is actually films clips for at least 5 seconds. So reason for this is sometimes if you're filming a video and maybe they want a script edit or something in it, and then you're having to like maybe re-edit your voiceover, and you're talking about, kind of goes back to like matching your scenes to your script. If I'm talking, for example, about a water bottle, I'm just looking at one here, and the sleeve on it, the fact it comes in this variety of colours and I'm showing or whatever. And in my B-roll, if my clip is only like 3 seconds and then I don't have something to be able to actually like be that length, that then halfway through what I'm saying, it has to change to something else and doesn't relate. That would be my advice, is always have it like at least 5 seconds, that then you know I have enough here that if there's a re-edit or something goes in, I don't have to worry about trying to find or mix something work that doesn't fully work for that scene, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that would be my top 3.
Maria, any advice?
I mean, obviously, I know you mentioned the script, Ali, but before the script, I think is the brief. Always check the brief.
Golden rule.
So important. If you're not sure about something in the brief, just ask the brand and make sure you're on the same page. And I think the one where you have a voiceover, like record the same thing in one go, kind of, and have the voice just in case, you have to change something in that part instead of redoing the whole voiceover. I think, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
And just make sure that you are tidy, like yourself and your environment.
Be tidy, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I would add here, do test shots of everything, especially when you don't see the camera, you don't see what's recording. Just always test it before you go on for 8 minutes, and it could be, not up to par. That, and I think I definitely agree with all of your tips, girls. I think it's easy, but it's hard because we live in it, we live and breathe it, but sometimes obviously we forget about the little things. But if you do, as a creator, if you do have a spare 5 minutes today after watching this, make your little checklist of things that maybe sometimes slip your mind and you know it. Like sometimes I forget to wipe my lens and then I'm recording my test shot and I'm like, I didn't wipe my lens. Okay, yeah. So this is on my little checklist. And sometimes it is as easy as to just write them down and just have it as your little manifestation board, just have it out.
Just put it in front of you, and that's it.
Yeah, but genuinely, I feel like sometimes we're a bit more visual than our process is as creators. So sometimes it's really good to actually have it on paper to just remember those little things. And it could be as silly as wipe your camera, like for me.
Literally. Fair.
And just to end this with just a quick note from us. I know we've spoken about it a couple of times, but if you feel like the brand is not fair with the edits that they're requesting, it might be a reshoot, it might be just an edit that is not fair for you as a creator. And there are situations like that, not a lot, but there are. I just had a couple of them now in the emails, and that's why I'm just pointing this out. Just feel free to tell the brand that, look, this is not fair for you. Like, obviously, just package it in a way that is polite, of course, but don't be afraid of just standing for yourself and just telling them look, this is what it was in the brief. We're always going to be there to back up if that's the case, of course. And just make sure that you're standing up for yourself, because sometimes we just don't see it in the request edits for some reason, and it's always good to double check with us, because that's what happens usually. The creators come to us and they're like, oh, I have this situation, how should I approach this? And we tell them, just go and talk to the brand. We really encourage that. And in the event of the brand being not being very responsive to it, then we will step in and we will try to figure out a solution for both parties. But just do that.
Be your own advocate, but also you have support system behind you, basically.
Pretty much like that. Yeah. Same for the brands. I mean, it's not just the creator side. It's the same for the brands, because as I mentioned earlier, I didn't ask for that reshoot video because I genuinely felt there was nothing to do about it. It was just a lost cause. But if you think that something can be improved, but you're not very sure and you don't want to bother the creator or something like that, just do it. Just take it and do it, because it's your it's your right to do it. You have one round of edits, just use them. Well, interesting topic of today, and hopefully everyone is going to take some good lessons out of them. We are keen to see you in our next episode. If you have any questions or any topics that you want us to discuss in our podcast, just let us know over social media or email hello@usclip.com. See you in our next episode and on our Instagram lives. Bye.